Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship.
The faculty brings together the expertise, engaged partnerships of key partners in Toronto, including Public Health Ontario, ISIS, and Toronto Public Health, and globally, including the World Health Organization and Gavi. That would be Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, Bill Gates' company. So 19 of 27 of these members, just to drive this home, are some way, shape, form, or tied to this organization that's receiving funding from vaccine manufacturers, openly admitting this, and is receiving funding as well from the World Health, or has, sorry, let me, not funding, has expertise and engaged partnerships of key partners with the World Health Organization and Gavi. We need to get passionate about truth. If this doesn't rile you up, but you get excited about a hockey game, your mind's in the wrong place for the benefit of Canada.
We have all been inundated with various pandemic marketing slogans over the last 16 months, from 2 weeks to flatten the curve, to stop the spread, to stay home and save lives, and the continually infamous trust the experts and their science. But who exactly are these experts? For Rebel News, I'm Tamara Ugolini, bringing you back to June 2020 when Ontario Premier Doug Ford was scrutinized, saying that he was trusting these experts, but oddly refused to name them, citing, at the time, privacy concerns. Well, after about a month of political pressure, and out of thin air, appeared the Ontario Science Table. See, here in Ontario at least, our science is different. While other provinces move to reopen completely, doing away with the mask mandates, in Ontario, we are to remain in a staged approach with various levels of restrictions for forever, because there's no concrete plan of a full reopening. So who are the members of this science table? Well, formed in July of 2020, they list 3 guiding principles. The first is they claim to be guided by the most current scientific evidence. The second guiding principle is that they're transparent. And the third is that they're independent. They generally advise the provincial government of what will be said publicly, but no government body or office vets or controls their scientific content or communications in any way. Well, just how independent and how unbiased are the members who comprise the Ontario Science Table? It turns out that Greg Staley, he's an independent journalist who runs the media outlet called Diverge Media, has dug into the COVID-19 modeling consensus table specifically and researched some of their key players. He joined me to chat and share what he has found. Check it out.
What I found most interesting, Greg, was that 19 of the 27 Ontario Science Table members have some form of connection. Either they're employed in some capacity or they actually represent the University of Toronto. That's the Dalai Lama School of Public Health, which is part of U of T. Can you share with our viewers why this may be a conflict of interest and how bias could occur with such heavy weight of influence coming from this particular institution?
Yeah, well, I'll say for your viewers outright, I'm not sure that it is a conflict of interest, but it is most certainly alarming. The University of Toronto and the Dalai Lama School of Public Health, like you said, have 19 of their 27 members of their panel that are in some way, shape, or form attached in assistant professorships, things like that, to the U of T or the Dalai Lama School of Public Health. And so those concerns are amplified when we're talking about a balanced viewpoint in handling of COVID-19. So like we read at the Dalai Lama School of Public Health, and I quote, they take donations or funding from philanthropic, not-for-profit, and private sector organizations. And these private sector funding sources include vaccine manufacturers. Now, on the surface, it may not be a bad thing to have a few people like this representing and giving opinions to the premier, but when you have 19 of 27, that's where the concern comes in. So this is all safeguarded by their academic policies, they say, but the question for me will always remain of how much influence this could carry. We would be naive to think that concerns over funding couldn't potentially affect the work being done by these individuals. And when you factor in that 19 of 27 of the members are professors or are employed in some way, shape, or form with U of T or the Dalai Lama School of Public Health, and you consider the funding, it's one of those questions, do you bite the hand that feeds you? And I think that's a legitimate question, and it's concerning.
Absolutely. Now, breaking it down further to some of the individuals that sit on the representatives from the Ontario Science Table, some of the financial ties of those key players, what did you find there?
Yeah, so obviously you want to look into the leadership and who's making these decisions. So you look into the funding sources. And so we started with the leadership team. It's specifically Kumar Murthy, who's on the leadership team, not on his science table profile, ironically, it wasn't there, but it was on his public profile for the University of Toronto, where he had listed that he's the founder of the Ganita Lab and co-founder of Prada Technologies and Perfect Cloud. So we looked into Prada Technologies and we looked into a bit of his background. And so in 2017, he received a Knault Global Challenges Award in 2017 for his work on smart villages. And Prada Technologies on their website says they're a custom software development company that provides solutions in mobile development. And their site notes that, quote, mobile technology is, quote, becoming the center of attention nowadays, and the world is churning wireless. So it's definitely true. And this is to drive this point home further, how big the impact of lockdowns has been on consumer tech, at least potentially, because we don't know about the specifics of this company. But according to a report from App Annie, consumers in the third quarter of 2020 downloaded 33 billion new apps and spent a record $28 billion on apps, up 20% year over year. So it's pretty safe assumption to say that lockdowns are leading to more development in the technological sector. So that's where that potential conflict arises here. And then the funding from CIHR, there's a lot of government funding that went out for these things. And the logical question, again, that needs to be asked is, do you bite the hand that feeds you? If you were concerned that what you said would lose you funding, would you still say it? If you were advocating for lockdowns and that would, or against lockdowns and that would cause you to lose your funding, would you do it? Because a lot of this, it's not paid up front, is my understanding, this funding, and a lot of it's 2 and 3 years, so they likely haven't received a bunch of it. So these are the questions that come up from it, and then you look into reports like App Annie, and the lockdowns have immensely affected our consumption patterns, especially when it comes to technology.
Mm-hmm. And the mobility data too is interesting to note there, because a big part of this was the Ford government has been tracking and tracing that mobility data potentially unlawfully. So there was a bit of an outpour of that over the last year plus of these restrictions. Now, early in 2021, we heard about one of the most vocal members of the Ontario Science Table, that's David Fissman. The Toronto Sun exposed him after he was retained by the teachers union to advocate against the provincial government's attempt to reopen the schools. And you found more broad potential conflicts there. Can you share with our viewers what you found and how much financial gain Fissman specifically is set to get from his promotion of the pandemic pandemonium?
Putting an exact number on it is obviously difficult. He's involved in numerous funding, COVID modeling, different things like that. You can look it up. If you go to Canadian Institute of Health Research, grants and funding, you can put in his name and see everything he's involved in. It's unclear to me how much he would receive, because sometimes he's a principal investigator, sometimes co-investigator. I'm not sure how that funding gets divvied up. But we've discussed it before on our Sunday show, and the information is freely available on the Ontario Science Table website. If you go and click Our Partners on the website, and then you click Modeling Consensus tab, you can see if any member has listed a declaration of interest. So in short, declaration of interest, these are things that may be a potential conflict of interest or that may affect one's ability to remain impartial, and thus they're listed there for transparency purposes. So in the case of David Fissman, he's listed that he's taken honorariums for attending advisory board meetings with Pfizer and AstraZeneca. He's also received consulting fees from many other companies. I recommend your audience goes there and check out. A lot of the science tables listed different things, but check it out. He seems to have done well by all accounts during the pandemic. And this is the question. He's one of the most vocal members. And you have to ask, like, how much does that play into things, the funding behind the scenes? I don't know in his case, and he can only answer that. But again, would you do something that would potentially jeopardize that funding? And in his case, I think he's on over $1 million worth of projects listed on the CIHR.
Wow. Yeah, I'm glad that you referenced the CIHR because in your report you link directly to that's the Canadian Institute of Health Research. And then you can further search the funding decisions database. And so that's where you found a lot of this information. Since the publishing of your original report, that was nearly a month ago now, have you been able to find any other glaring profiteers?
Yeah, so obviously always being cautious and looking, trying to find things and dig up, because I think it's one of the most important things of all of this. There needs to be accountability and oversight. But I don't know that there is any glaring pandemic profiteers since I published my report. I wish there was a silver bullet that we could all point at and say that's terrible and this needs to be stopped, and it would get people passionate about it. But the reality is, if you go through the grants and contributions on searchopencanada.ca, that's where all the government grants and contributions are posted. If you just type in COVID as your search moderator, there's over 35,000 hits that will come back related to that keyword in just the last 2 years. So line by line accounting needs to be done of how all the money was spent in a lot of these projects. And you have charities like the United Way who received like $150 million. And I'm assuming they said to help vulnerable Canadians. So questions need to be asked, like, how was that spent to help vulnerable Canadians? Because that's just a drop in the bucket, that $150 million, because that's been done, hundreds of thousands here, millions there, and it's been done 35,000 plus times in the last 2 years, according to that grants and contributions OpenGov website.
Wow, that's sounds like a breadth of research to undertake as well. So I'm glad that we can point some of our viewers in that direction, and perhaps people have tips or more information to share on this topic. And all in all, what you're saying, it sounds like the pandemic will only end when those who are profiteering from it no longer can. With that in mind, do you have a message to Doug Ford or our fellow Ontarians on how to advocate for a more balanced approach?
Stop caring more about hockey than you do your Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. I'm just going to be blunt. Canadians, you need to get passionate about having the facts straight. You need to get passionate about accountability and oversight on your politicians, medical professionals, and everyone else who's in charge of this society. Canadians need to care more about the truth and accountability of their politicians and medical professionals than they care about who wins a flippin' hockey game. And I love hockey too, but they need to care more about that than what television shows on or gaining approval from any group of people. Canadians need to demand transparency, and we need to have a full line-by-line cost-benefit analysis performed, because, like I said, over 35,000 things were slapped with a COVID label in the last 2 years that received grant and contribution funding, and that's just a drop in the hat. That's just one place I've looked. It's not just my opinion that lockdowns aren't effective too. I would add that the Lancet reported that full lockdowns didn't work in August of 2020. A full cost benefit analysis needs to be done, and people need to get passionate about the things that matter and getting to the information that matters. When we look at the Dalalana School of Health, and I didn't mention this because I actually was doing additional digging for our interview together, but April 27, 2021, Merck gave them $3 million for their vaccine of preventable diseases. That's, again, a drop in the hat. That's not even what I wanted to bring up per se. I'm trying to dig through all the different things I have open here. Here it is, Dalalana School of Health. Our people, this is the Institute of Pandemic Research, I believe it is. And there's a bunch of the science table members that are part of this group. And this says on their funding here, and I quote, "The faculty brings together the expertise, engaged partnerships of key partners in Toronto, including Public Health Ontario, ISIS, and Toronto Public Health, and globally, including the World Health Organization and Gavi." That would be Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, Bill Gates' company. So 19 of 27 of these members, just to drive this home, are some way, shape, form, or tied to this organization that's receiving funding from vaccine manufacturers, openly admitting this, and is receiving funding as well from the World Health, has expertise and engaged partnerships of key partners with the World Health Organization and Gavi. We need to get passionate about truth. If this doesn't rile you up, but you get excited about a hockey game, your mind's in the wrong place for the benefit of Canada.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's just, it frustrates me. I don't know what else to say about it.
And Greg, where can our viewers find you if they'd like to support your work or dig further themselves?
If you want to look at more of our work, divergemedia.ca. We also do something called the Sunday Show every Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern. That's me and my contributor, Paul Staley, is also my brother. But yeah, you can look for us YouTube, Facebook, social media, pretty much any of the main ones. We will be there at Diverge Media.
This is the kind of information that the state broadcasters, well, they're not going to show you. They're the ones giving these experts the airtime. Look, David Fissman even notes in his declared conflicts that he's a self-proclaimed COVID expert. And people pay because they want to hear him speak. Well, I certainly don't. But I digress. So I reached out to both Fissman and Murdy for comment. For Fissman, I wanted to know specifically how much monetary value he had received from public sources since March 2020. I wanted to know how his employment, research, grants, and consultation funding affected his ability to provide unbiased and balanced reports to the Ontario government and government-funded media outlets, while asking him to disclose if he or any firm or company that he is associated with has benefited either professionally and or financially since lockdown began in March 2020. For Murdy, I asked much of the same, but also I wanted to know about Prada Technologies and Perfect Cloud and their revenue and how it compared to previous years. Murdy replies saying that Prada has no revenue and Perfect Cloud's revenue is minimal, whatever that means, but he doesn't know because he's not operationally involved. He is co-founder and investor in both, but doesn't receive compensation from either. He isn't aware of his own professional or financial benefit that has arisen as a result of lockdowns. And unfortunately, David Fissman, well, he just didn't respond. So while our overlords dangle freedom in front of our faces with thresholds of vaccination uptake, they are advised in part by the experts in this report. So is it surprising then that Gavi is in partnership with the institutions said to be advising the pandemic response? After all, Gavi is the Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunization, which is just funded by Bill and Melinda Gates. So ultimately, it seems as though until we get more experts with skin in the game, who don't stand personal, financial, and or employment gain from sowing fear into the minds of Ontarians, then we'll be continually inundated with doomsday predictions that never come true. For Rebel News, I'm Tamara Ugolini. The mainstream media would never feature a story like this because, just like Greg said, they don't want to bite the hand that feeds. To continue supporting us in bringing you the other side of the unreported story, please consider donating what you can to rebelinvestigates.com. We've been demonetized by YouTube, and we risk being deplatformed completely any day now. If you want us to continue this important work, then we need your help to do that. Please go to rebelinvestigates.com.